Welcome to Module 4, teacher leaders. So just want to give another quick flyover here of Module 4 so you can see what's going to be expected, looking at some module objectives here. This first one we're going to spend some time with here, looking at assisting teachers in improving instructional practices, student feedback, technology, assessment, interdisciplinary instruction, and grading practices, and also kind of still working on this idea of facilitating instructional and leadership capacity of teachers. So this is a repeat, but this is still something we want to see as a thread all the way through this course because I think it's a huge part of teacher leadership. All right, so when we look at the readings for this particular module here, we're still working on the textbook here, 109 to 180. We also have some other readings here, building teacher leaders' capacity for facilitating adult learning. This is from the Teacher Leader Toolkit. And again, one of the big things that we wanted to stress in this program was that we are aligned with these new resources coming out of the state. There is a ton of information out there now coming from ODE and all of these work groups. I'm currently serving as an Ohio Teacher Leader Liaison, which is a 2-year position where we're going to be helping kind of guide teacher leadership in the state of Ohio. And I'm going to tell you the things that are coming out of these work groups, like the framework and the toolkit, the standards revision, the liaison group, fantastic. The Teacher Leader Summit is something we'll talk about a little bit later too. Some great things going on in the state of Ohio. So this document here is going to give you a little bit of information just on adult learning. Also has some really great articles, some of which I'm using for this course, which is great. And also talking about some of the key things that we need to know as in terms of teaching adults. If you scroll down here, there's also some other articles. There's looking at some tools that might be here, and also so just some overview of different pieces, some great references as well, the framework and some other things. So this is a short little kind of article here, but just talks about some things in terms of teacher leadership and adult learning. But again, like a lot of the other ODE documents that I've used in this course, lots of great hyperlinks for you, so you can use those. All right, one of the other articles that I wanted to look at too here is this third one here, what it takes to move from good to great. And I wanted to make sure that you knew that you do not need to read all 52 pages of this document. You are very welcome to do so, but you have a lot of other things on your plate, I know, and a lot of other reading. And I know reading takes time, especially for people like me who are slow readers. So, what I wanted you to do is go to, in the document, it would be page 21. All right. So if you look at the very top there in my PDF, it's page 29 because there's a few intro pages and table of contents, stuff like that. But anyway, they're talking about in this article the different stages that one might go through in their career. And yes, they are talking about, in this case, in some of this article about national board qualified teachers. But I think this cuts through any and all disciplines that we're looking at in the teaching world and really the different stages that we go through. So they talk about this teacher leader stage and the idea of that you get to a point in your career where you're kind of got some experience, you've got some things under your belt that maybe less experienced teachers have, and they talk about some of the things that go on during this teacher leader stage, which is kind of cool. And they talk about some supports that need to happen, and things that can go on during this teacher leader stage. They also talk about the most important supports and experiences for people at the teacher leader stage, and some of the things they're able to do, maybe becoming an instructional coach or in curriculum development. And you can see here they have them kind of ranked, the percentage of people who actually receive support in this study. And then they also talk about the utility and implementation of teacher leadership. And so they talk a little about, like, for example, this is a great one. Has your teacher leadership role positively impacted your decision to remain in a teaching position where you're responsible for teaching students directly? And you can see here an emphatic yes, which is pretty awesome. And this sort of cuts into my research study that I did for my dissertation, which was teacher leadership and the effects on job satisfaction and teacher retention. So I was interested in looking at, for people that held teacher leadership roles, whether it be formal or informal, were those teachers more likely to stay in their positions because of the things that they were able to enjoy about their teacher leadership role, whether it be the autonomy or whether it be just being able to lead outside of their classroom and having some kind of control over some things that maybe traditionally weren't necessarily within their grasp, or they didn't know that they could be within their grasp, right? They also talk about some teacher leadership supports and barriers, which I think is kind of cool, and they go through some of those. And then as you scroll down here, they talk about compensation, which this has been an interesting conversation in our own school district where we have talked about how much do we pay teacher leaders and formal teacher leaders in this case, in our case, and we're thinking about down the road, like our department chairs, for example, at our high school, their compensation is time compensation. So, for example, they have a position where they don't have a duty, so they don't have like hall duty or class coverages or cafeteria duty. That's their compensation, but um, is monetary compensation going to be something that's more beneficial for teachers? So we're kind of toying around with different ideas, and we actually have started to do so with our elementary department chairs or grade level chairs, which are actually monetarily compensated as opposed to time compensation. They have some policy things in here and just some suggestions for career pathways for teachers and teacher leaders, stepping stones to teacher leadership. I just thought this was kind of an interesting, just couple of pages. So I think just again read. I guess it would be pages 21, 27. Just a short read, but I think it'll get you thinking about a couple of things for sure in the area of teacher leadership. And I guess my hope for all of you is that for those of you that are already operating in a teacher leadership role, that maybe you can look at some ways to maybe support your own role or others in your school district. But for those of you that maybe aren't in a formal teacher leadership role or haven't taken on maybe even an informal teacher leadership role, that maybe these are some things that will kind of nudge you in the right direction. So kind of a cool thing to be thinking about. All right, for the videos that you're going to be watching here, we have a video here on instructional coaching, and there's a ton out there on instructional coaching. Actually, one of my best friends at work, his job, he's an instructional coach, and he does that. And he does instructional coaching cycles with teachers, and there's a kind of way that goes, and there's a kind of a modeling stage where you actually teach the lesson. And this isn't the only way to do it, but you can teach the lesson, and then you co-teach or you have the other teacher observe you while you're teaching, and then you talk about it, and then they take over, and then you observe them, and you make recommendations. So there's a lot of different ways to go about instructional coaching, but there's some real great best practices out there. So that'll get you at least thinking about it. As far as how that goes. Now, when we think about the target up at the top, the module objective, looking at how we can help others improve, some of the things that we need to start stepping into are things like instructional strategies. We need to talk about assessment. We need to talk about grading practices and things like that. And I wanted to throw some of that in here throughout this course as well. Obviously, this is not an instructional practices course or a grading course or an assessment course, but these are the kind of things that teacher leaders need to be able to understand, especially if they're serving an instructional coaching role or some type of role like that, even in a mentoring role with a new teacher. These are conversations you have every single day with them. Hey, why did you do it this way? Have you ever thought about using this? Have you ever considered why teach in this way or whatever? So there's a lot of great things. So this is a kind of a challenging two-parter here by Rick Romellian. If any of you read his work or seen any of his work on YouTube about redos and retakes and grading practices, pretty tough stuff when you think about it, because it really flies in the face of a lot of trends, or I shouldn't say trends, but history of grading practices and assessment in education. So that's a good one to look at. All right, as far as our discussion question here, it says, based on what you've learned about instructional coaching, what are the benefits and challenges for those operating in these positions? Be sure to use resources to strengthen your claims. I'm going to tell you what, a good friend of mine, like I said, he does this on a daily basis, and I have a couple other friends in the district as well that do this district wide, and they love their jobs, but there are surely some frustrations that they have because there's just difficulties. I mean, you're working with other people, and in some cases you have to kind of gain access to people's classrooms and build trust and make sure that people trust you. And one of the real things that's hard for instructional coaches, in particular if they don't have any classes on their own classes on their class load, there are issues with trust. Sometimes instructional coaches, because they may be removed from the classroom and they don't have daily teaching, grading responsibilities, parents to kind of email or phone call. Sometimes there can be issues with staff members, feeling a little bit distrustful and maybe not completely understanding what they do, and that's a real thing. And so there's definitely some challenges. So maybe that's something that you dig into a little bit, or maybe you consider something else that you've experienced in your school district. And that's just one example. And Just wanted to give you something to at least get started. And then for your Module 4 reflection, I have here rebuilding teacher leaders' capacity for facilitating adult learning. So again, going back up to that article, and I have the link here. And I want you to think about 3 resources that you found and how they're going to help you in leading other adults. So really kind of pick through these and consider some things that are in there. Also, I want to open it up. If there's something else that you find that you think is a little bit better than what you see in there and you'd like to include that, please do so. Please include that as a resource and just make sure I know where it's coming from. Okay. So, anyway, wanted to give you some flexibility in that as you go through. Okay. So, we got a reflection, discussion question, got some videos, got some reading in here, and this should be a great module for you. And again, just continuing those great conversations about how we can help support each other in terms of our own personal growth as adults, but also student growth and improving our just general school outcomes, because I really believe that teacher leadership has really the chance to do that. It really has a lot going for it as long as teachers can be supported, as long as they can lead with passion and purpose, and they feel that they're making a real difference and they have time to do the work that they really like to do. And when we talk about that compensation issue, that they are compensated, whether it be with time or maybe some extra professional development opportunities or whatever. There's a lot of different things to kind of discuss when you think about compensation when it comes to teacher leadership. Okay. All right, so I hope you have a great Module 4. I'm looking forward to reading all of your work. You've been doing a fantastic job so far, so keep up the great work. Feel free to reach out at any time. I'd be happy to help, and I hope you have a great, great week. Take care, everyone.